Bless you. I expect you guys to, type a question or a comment in the chat. A comment could be like, hey, when you said this, it stuck out to me and I appreciate you saying it. Or a question like, you struggled with this while you were in undergrad. Could you tell me a little bit about taking your science classes? Or, what do I have to do to become a physician? Something like that. I really want you guys to engage. This is an opportunity to have someone who's like real in the flesh, that is a professional in a high prolific place to talk to, that does some really, really important work. I was going to start by saying how we met, but she's going to cover that in the presentation, so I won't give that away. One thing that I will say, and this is to everyone, the students and everyone, is just in life, make sure you take something from everyone. It's something that I live by. Like I say that I could take something from a bum on the street to, a billionaire. You know what I mean? When I say take something, I don't mean physically. I mean like, maybe they say something that sticks with you, or just kind of crossing paths with them. Thank God for social media, because we were able to reconnect. Yeah, I'll stop there. You can share your screen. And I just, I really want to say thank you. I appreciate you taking the time out to chat with my kids.
No problem, Dr. Cox. I'm excited to be here. So my name is Liz Clayborne, like the clothing line, but Clayborne. And I'm an emergency physician. I live in Maryland, just outside of DC. And I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about my journey into a career in medicine, which was not really linear. I actually have a pretty non-traditional path and non-traditional career in medicine. And I'll also spend some time for you guys to kind of think critically about what it is that makes you tick and what you should be considering when you're thinking about the kind of career that you want to build for yourself. So hopefully this will be fun, interactive. I have a lot of pictures, fewer words, a little more towards the end. But, I want you to enjoy it. I know you guys have a lot of screen fatigue, and I certainly want to give lots of opportunity for you to ask questions, because I think that's where it's most helpful when you talk to someone like me. So I made a little presentation for you. I will share it. Let's see. I'm always...
Technology always presents challenges.
I know, because, well, let me see, because I have it open as a PowerPoint. I want to see.
I can
maybe I'll just share entire screen. Is that easier?
Present now, the bottom right. Can you see it? Can you see it?
And, oh, it only, because in Google, you can't do, it's not like Zoom. Gotcha. So I'll have to do entire screen, because it's a big presentation. It's easier. Okay. Are you guys able to see the screen?
Not yet. I don't see it. Let me see. Hold on one second.
You know what I could do is to get it in a window, I'll just click on the link I sent you, and maybe that way will be easier.
Yeah, or I can share it from my screen. Like if it doesn't work, I can maybe as a facilitator, it'll be easier. And then
let me try. We'll take give me 2 seconds to look at that email and see. I thought I should be able to share entire screen. We'll try it this way. Always the technical difficulties.
Always.
The battle.
That's life. It always presents challenges. You got to just keep trucking along.
Okay, let's see.
So I can share on my end if you want me to just.
Yeah, let me see. Okay, here it goes. Well, if this doesn't work, I definitely will have you do that, because I don't want to waste any more time. Okay. Present now. Tab. Yeah, here we go. Okay. Can you see now?
Yes, there we go.
Okay. And I wonder if there's a way to make it full picture. Well, this will work well enough. Okay. So as I said, you guys, my name's Liz Clayborne, and I'm a practicing emergency physician, but I also am an entrepreneur. I'm actually CEO of a medical device startup, and I do a lot of policy work as well as interviews in the national media that we'll touch on a little bit. So I'll talk to you a little bit about my journey to becoming a doctor. And some of the things that I'll highlight is like how I really had to think about specifically with a career in medicine, early things that would prime me to be a good candidate to get into medical school and be successful with a career in medicine, but doing that with balance in my life. Like I live by the motto, work hard, play hard. If you don't play hard and you don't have like happiness and balance in your life, it is really hard to be successful. So I am not someone who's like, it's all about sacrifice and it's all about work. It's all about balance. And you'll find that people who are really successful have good balance and have habits that allow them to flourish and work hard, but also enjoy their life along the way. So starting with how it started. So I was born and raised in Denver, Colorado. People think that's weird because they don't think that many Black people are in Denver, I guess. I guess they think of Colorado and think of mountains and cowboys. But I am biracial. My dad is Black. My mom is white. And although that's really commonplace and being biracial is not a big deal anymore, it was a very big deal when I was born. I actually remember that when Jungle Fever came out, and I don't even know if you guys know about Jungle Fever, but it's an old movie that you should look it. My family, they did a documentary on our family because we were this like interracial family, and Jungle Fever spoke to like interracial couples. And I remember this particularly because they wanted a shot of my mom doing our hair, because I guess, you know, it was like this stereotype that this white woman wouldn't know how to do her Black kids' hair. So my mom knows how to do our hair. She always has done her hair. I actually now have 2 daughters, and I wanted sons primarily because I did not want to have to deal with doing their hair. But I love my daughters now, and it is lots of fun. And so I grew up, you know, I would say kind of like in a regular neighborhood, went to public schools my entire life. And I have 3 younger sisters. So I come from a family of all girls. And so these are some of the pictures of me growing up. You can see there my 5th grade class. Or my mom dressing us all like for Easter. And then the bottom right is actually my college dorm room that I was really proud of because I decorated it, I thought, in a just straight baller way. So we'll talk about that more. So that is where I started. And although I would say they could be potentially humble beginnings in that my parents weren't particularly wealthy and I was in public school the whole time and I had to kind of work really hard to get where I'm going, I say it's going pretty good. So I have now an academic position at a reputable institution. I work clinically. I'm married to my husband who loves to travel the globe with me. So you can see us here. That's us, I think, scuba diving probably in Roatan, which is outside of Honduras. We did our honeymoon in Egypt. I have 2 beautiful daughters, and I have a great career that I love, and I enjoy going to work. In fact, if I become really wealthy, which is probably on the agenda with my medical device program, I still will work because I enjoy the work that I do. And so I feel proud of how things are going in my life right now because I have been able to build a life that I enjoy, but also gives back to my community, my family, and the world in a way that I think is significant and meaningful. So I will show you guys real quick, a quick clip of some of the media that I've been doing. Oh, is it not going to work on here? Let's see. Can you, Trisha, when you share screen, does it click for you?
Yeah, it will. It'll just take me 30 seconds, guys. Let me just handle that.
And maybe I will just have you drive then. So should I stop sharing?
Yeah, stop sharing for me.
Okay. So while he's getting that prime, what he's going to be showing you is some recent national media that I have been doing. So I have recently been given the opportunity in this last year to have the platform to speak on the news pretty frequently. CNN, MSNBC, a lot of other outlets. And I'm going to give you a sample of some of the things that I've been talking about recently so you can see this other aspect and facet of my career that I've been able to build that's been really fun, interesting, and powerful. Yeah, see, yours is presenting the way that I thought it would present.
Yeah. Let me just mute myself back and then I'll share.
Sure, and I'll just prompt you to move along with the slides since yours is working better.
You can't even lie. It's that car right around.
And if it doesn't work, Christian, I could also just bring it up as a separate tab real quick because I'm bringing it up now.
Tristan, you're muted.
Oh, sorry, I was talking. Yeah, thank you. I have a video, Liz. I'm gonna.
Okay.
That the Capitol Hill riot that left 5 people dead will likely become a significant coronavirus spreading event. Joining me right now to discuss, Dr. Elizabeth Clayborne, an emergency physician and adjunct professor at the University of Maryland School of Medicine. Doctor, so good to see you. So how concerned are you about the fact that so many people who converged on Capitol Hill came from a lot of different places and now they've all gone back home? Do you believe that super spreader event is endangering a lot of communities?
Absolutely, Fred. You have to remember, we are already still concerned about the surge that is going to be a result of the holiday travel that just took place at the end of December and into January. So on top of that, having a large event like this where people came from multiple states and were in a close proximity to others, sometimes not masked, it is a huge concern that they are going to return to their homes and take the COVID virus with them. And our hospitals are extremely stretched thin. So right now is one of the most dangerous times for you to become sick, which is why it's important for everyone to really be buckling down and listening to their health officials, making sure that they're wearing masks, that they're socially distancing, and continuing to be vigilant to protect themselves and their families, because we are becoming overrun in our hospital systems.
And then you just received your second dose, right, of the coronavirus vaccine Thursday morning. How are you feeling, and what has that experience been like?
Yes, I was a little more nervous since I had heard a lot of my colleagues had somewhat of a more, severe reaction as far as side effects. But I'm happy to say I actually just had arm soreness and I was slightly achy, maybe 12 hours after the shot, and then it resolved. So I still want to encourage everyone, especially those who are skeptical of this vaccine, to understand that you should look at the data, understand that this is the only way out. This is the only way to protect ourselves and get back to any sense of normalcy. And so it's important for you to vaccinate when it becomes available. And we're always working hard to, get these vaccines to everyone. In fact, the University of Maryland right now has a new trial for an upcoming vaccine with Novavax, and we're enrolling in a phase 3 trial to get more opportunities for people to get vaccines to them, because this is going to be a process that we're experiencing for the rest of this year. And while you're waiting to get vaccinated, you also need to make sure you're taking steps to protect yourself by having an advanced care plan. This is something I always bring up with you, Fred, when I talk about, the experience with me having a vaccine, what it's like to be on the front lines. And having an advanced care plan means something that you have documented, talk to your family about, that alerts physicians like me in a medical emergency about what your history is, what you would want if you can't speak for yourself, and who to speak to. I recently did a TEDx talk about this. If you want to learn more, I encourage you to look that up and use platforms such as mydirectives.com to protect yourself, fill out an advance directive, and save yourself from having a medical emergency in which there's no information available.
Look for that.
It gives you a voice where you may not be able to speak for yourself.
Excellent advice. And hopefully baby's doing well too. We've been following your pregnancy all throughout the pandemic. You were pregnant during the pandemic, had your baby during the pandemic, and now here you're talking to us about the vaccine and protecting you, yourself, guys, and your family. Hoping all's well with you and the family this happy new year.
Thank you, Fred. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks so much, Dr. Elizabeth Clayborne.
Thanks for that, Tristan. So that was one of the interviews that I did with Frederica Whitfield, who's one of the anchors on CNN. I really like her. I developed a great relationship with her producer. So I've done probably like half a dozen interviews with her in particular. But, this all came about because I was pregnant when COVID-19 hit. I was about 6 months pregnant. And in the beginning, we really just didn't know what to expect. There were actually 2 other emergency physicians in my group who were also pregnant. So there are 3 women in my group that were pregnant. And if we all left at the same time, that would have been a pretty decent stress on the staff at my hospital. So we got together and we decided we were going to stay and we were going to protect ourselves as best as possible. But, it was scary because I didn't know at the time what the risks were to me or, to my unborn baby. Anytime you're pregnant, you're at higher risk for having complications to get sick, period, whether that's a flu or a cold or anything else. So, I was trying to be very, very careful at work and protect myself. And in the beginning, we didn't have a lot of PPE. So that was a challenge. And because I had this story, I had a local news station reach out to me and said, hey, we'd like to talk to you about what it's like to be an ER doctor and be pregnant. They really liked that interview and it kind of exploded from there. And then I got the opportunity to do a lot of national interviews. And what I found is I'd always been someone who wanted to have the ability to impact our healthcare structure, the leaders who make the regulations and guidelines that kind of dictate how care is delivered, and specifically focused on like our underserved communities, our communities of color. Because I work in a, PG County, which is primarily Black. I think it's important that we highlight how COVID-19 is hitting the Black community especially hard in our communities of color, and that we need to have resources dedicated to them and access to things like the vaccine. And the media platform has been great, giving me a voice to highlight those issues so they don't get glazed over. And also as a Black female, representation matters. So it's also important to me that, we have more faces like mine that look like people that don't typically get that seat at the table, talking on TV, speaking about things, giving examples to other young people. Like, there are Black professionals that have these positions that are speaking out, and you can be someone like that in the future. So it's something I'm pretty excited about. Happy to talk to you guys more about how that has evolved. Okay, you can go to the next slide. So the other thing that evolved when I was on my journey to medical school, and I'll give you a little bit of the backstory, but what we're doing right now as far as how it's going is I am also a business owner. So I came up with an epistaxis, which is the fancy medical word for nosebleed device. And I don't know how many of you guys have had nosebleeds. You can let me know if you've ever had a nosebleed. Very common, 60% of people experience a nosebleed. And believe it or not, about 500,000 people a year go to the ER because their nose is bleeding. And it is, I guess, an emergency because you're bleeding, but in the kind of disease severity scale that we give patients when they present, this is a lower acuity illness. And for me, as a resident, I was just shocked that people were waiting 4 or 5 hours to get their nosebleed treated. And I was like, just pinch your nose, just hold pressure on your nose. Like, why are you in this ER bothering me about your nosebleed? But believe it or not, it's actually hard to hold pressure on your nose. And to treat a nosebleed appropriately, first, just so you all know, you need to apply constant uninterrupted pressure to the soft side walls of your nose for about 10 to 15 minutes. You want to actually put your head forward, not back, and ice on the back of the neck will not help you because it doesn't really supply the vessels that are bleeding. So there is a lot of information in how nosebleeds should be treated. And I found that in the ER, we were just scrambling to do crazy things to treat these patients. We would tape together tongue depressors to make a clip. And then sometimes we would spray medications such as Afrin, like an over-the-counter decongestant, which shrinks up vessels to help stop bleeding. And I just could not believe there was nothing on the market that treated nosebleeds. So I invented it. So I invented my device, Bleed Freeze. I patented that device. I participated in some business plan competitions. And since then, this pet project that started as just something I was doing as like a side hustle in residency has blossomed into a full-fledged startup. And so now I'm CEO of this company. We recently were involved in the TEDCO Builder Fund, which is kind of an accelerator program. And right now I'm in the process of raising a seed round, which is going to give me money to get my product out into market. And so my goal is for this to be a blockbuster product. It will be a household name, the Band-Aid of nosebleeds that people can treat everywhere to stop their nosebleeds at home and use it instead of having to come to the ER. But it's also something I can use in the ER when you show up so that I'm not just saying, hey, I'll see you in 4 hours. In the meantime, you can, pinch your nose until I can see you. So it's been really exciting. And a kind of, again, a very unique, different facet of my career that I never planned for. But I treat this as, walking through all the doors that present themselves to me. So this is not something that I anticipated or planned, but it has hugely enhanced my career. And financially, right, this is an exit, right? This is something that can make me financially independent, where I do not have to work anymore if this takes off. And if that happens, it will allow me to focus on all the other things that I'm really passionate about and have that work-life balance that we talked about. And so it's something that I'm excited to do. And again, happy to talk to you, those of you who have interest in business, entrepreneurism, inventions, how it was to patent something and build a business. Next slide. So how do you get there? How do you go from, how it was going to how it is going right now? So I'll walk you through what my journey was, and I'll give you some highlights of what I think is important for you guys to think about as you're, entering the years where you'll start contemplating what kind of life and career you want to have. First thing that I always mention is you have to surround yourself with success. It does matter who you hang out with. There's actually a lot of studies that talk about that you are probably going to have more in common with the 5 people you spend the most time with. And so if those people are not doing things, if they are not on their hustle, if they're not succeeding, if they're not pushing you, that is going to impact how you are able to succeed. So, I have friends from all walks of life. I pride myself on the diversity of my friend group, but all of my friends are doing their thing in whatever, their lane is. Here's a picture of my SNMA group, which is the Student National Medical Association. These were kind of like all the minority, the core group of minority students who I went to medical school with. And that's me holding my match lever into my #1 program in emergency medicine that I wanted. And, I'm happy to say that literally everyone that was in that picture, they matched into their first choice of program. And part of the reason that happened is because we studied together, we pushed each other. When we had problems, we made sure that we supported one another. It wasn't easy. It was not easy at all. I did horribly on step 1. And I want to take some time to speak quickly about standardized testing, because I think this does not get enough attention. If you talk to any really successful, in particular minority professional, you will find somewhere in their story where they did bad on a test, or maybe continuously did bad on tests. Take Kamala Harris. You guys know that she did not pass the bar on her first attempt. I did not pass my boards on my first attempt. It was devastating. I thought it was going to ruin my career. And then I started talking to everyone, and it turns out this is a very common story. It is very common for especially students of color to not perform as well on standardized tests. It does not mean that you are less intelligent. It does not mean that you cannot be successful. It does not mean that you're not as qualified to be applying to whatever program, school, or position that you want. I had what I would consider to be lower step 1 scores, which are the tests we take to get into residency when you're in medical school. My MCAT scores were not that great, which is the test that you use to get into medical school, but I still was able to go to all the places I want. And I was chief resident of my residency in emergency medicine, which is like an honor they give to the best residents. And so I do not think there is a direct correlation with how well you test all the time with how well you perform. And I've actually recently written on this topic as far as pipelines that we need to provide for getting more minority physicians. And one of the things that the evidence has shown us is that when admission committees are looking at qualified candidates, they actually need to blind the reviewing community to the scores, because there's an unnecessary bias to higher scores means that you're more intelligent. Higher scores sometimes just means that you're good at taking that test. There's a lot that goes into being a doctor that has very little to do with your book knowledge. I'm not going to lie, you need to be reasonably intelligent and with it to be a physician, because we digest an enormous amount of information and have to have that accessible in order to care for patients, because I can have anything show up at the ER, right? I could have a kid with a broken arm, a heart attack, a stroke. I could have someone who's dying. I could have someone who's been stabbed. I could have someone who has appendicitis. I need to be able to identify, recognize, and treat all that. And that takes a lot of knowledge that I have to be able to digest. But I would say what makes me a good doctor is not that I'm book smart, it's that I'm people smart, right? I'm emotionally intelligent. I can talk to someone, I can look at someone and tell, I feel like they're kind of downplaying their symptoms. I think, they don't really want to be here. The fact that they showed up means something's really wrong because otherwise they would never be in the hospital. Or, I don't know, I think this older lady is kind of lonely and I noticed that she doesn't have any family and, she keeps coming to the ER, probably not because she's sick, but because there's a social need, right, that's been unmet. Those are the skills that, are not necessarily taught through book knowledge or test taking, that they came from my life experience and from my personal experience that gave me the ability to connect with all different kinds of people. And that's something that you guys should be honing in your skills, your entire life. And it really does not have anything to do with what you're doing academically. Like, you are going to have to work hard. You are going to have to take tests. And I'm encouraging you to do the best that you can be. I just want you to know that it does not mean that you're less than if you happen to not be a good test taker. And if you are that kind of person, and this is ringing a bell for you, I want you to reach out to your teachers because there's some tools and tips and tricks that you can learn that will make you a better test taker. I had someone who, when I had to retake my boards, I was directed to, and she just kind of completely revolutionized the way I was taking standardized tests. There were very small things that I were doing that was kind of not allowing me to show the knowledge that I actually had. And so you seeking out those kind of resources early will help you to be more successful because you are going to be required to take tests, no matter what. And you want to do as best you can, but don't ever let someone tell you that you are not qualified and that you can't do something because of your test score. Next slide. So the other thing that you want to make sure you're doing on your journey is to serve others, right? Like service to others is not just about resume building or, because I feel like I'm obliged to, or my parents or my teachers ask me to do it. It actually has real life impact on you. So this is how I know Dr. Cox. There you can see a picture of the two of us. We met way back in 2006 and we were both in New Orleans doing a service trip to do cleanup for post Katrina. And it's so funny because this is like such a long time ago now, but it seems like it wasn't that long ago that we were down there. And it was an amazing experience because people came from all over the country and we slept in these crazy environments. We slept at a school that was in the 9th Ward. And I remember that it was really eerie because this was a school that during Hurricane Katrina, a lot of people in the community had fled to because it had multiple levels. I think it was like 4 stories high. So it was like one of the highest buildings in that neighborhood. So a lot of the people that were getting flooded out of their houses went to this school and they were stuck there for a long time. I think they were stuck there for like a week and they had written on the chalkboard notes to their loved ones because they thought they were going to die. And so this was after Katrina and after kind of the whole nation had watched this tragedy unfold. And there was so much cleanup that still needed to happen. So I flew down from DC where I was at that time after college to do this service project. And I slept on the floor of this classroom and every night we're looking up at the chalkboard of these messages that were written by these people who thought they were going to die. And fortunately, everyone at that school did get rescued. But, it was a very eerie, sometimes depressing experience. However, the people that I worked with and met, including Dr. Cox, I think it kind of bonded us for life because we had this really powerful experience where we went into people's homes and our job was to help clean up the debris. And I don't know if you guys have ever seen what a house looks like after it's been flooded at 10 feet. But I mean, it's a disaster. And a lot of these people in New Orleans were poor and did not have the money. And, there was no service to clean everything up. And so, a flood is hard because even like a fire, which destroys everything, you can't really get anything back. The flood, it's like you can see everything there. You can see the pictures, you can see the stuffed animals, you can see your furniture, but it's just ruined and it's now dangerous, right? It's like growing bacteria. There were special protocols that we had to use just to take the refrigerators out of the houses, for example. That's what you see in that picture because the standing water in the refrigerator creates this like toxic like water that can actually be life-threatening, and so we had to be really careful with that. But after we did all the cleanup and we kind of met people from all the country, we went into New Orleans, the city, and we had some social time. You can see a picture of Dr. Cox and I there at Louis Armstrong Park. That's where the statue is. And you know, a lot of us were kind of on our upward trend, our track to like getting our education. You know, about to finishing college and going to start our careers, or about to go to college. And it was wonderful to meet everyone that I had on this trip, including him. And I've kept in touch with most of the people that I met from that trip since that time. Next slide. The other thing I want to encourage you guys to do is to study and explore. So I'm a big proponent of traveling. You know, there's a lot of ways that you can travel for free if you think about it. I am like the queen of finding ways to get free trips to do academic things. So this is me presenting a poster in Hawaii, and the National Medical Association had scholarships for residents for me at the time, for example, and they flew me for free to Hawaii and put me up in a hotel so I could put this poster. And I use things like the excuse of doing something academic and piggybacking some fun things on top of that. So at the Hawaii trip, for example, I took my sister Brianna with me because I had a free hotel and all she had to do was pay for her flight. And we kind of, subsidized a little family sister trip, but then I also got something done. I had something that built my resume. I was able to network. You want to look for those opportunities. The picture of my husband and I with the beautiful blue water, that was in St. Croix because I took the opportunity to work in residency overseas in St. Croix, which is one of the U.S. Virgin Islands. Again, I was put up for 3 weeks for free with a car and a place to stay, and I asked him to come. He was only my boyfriend at the time. Hey, come and hang out with me in the Virgin Islands for 3 weeks. I'm getting put up and I'm going to be working some shifts. So that was a great experience. The lower left is like my best friends from college. We travel all around the world together. We have a really tight, knit group who travels together, but we make sure that, we reward ourselves anytime someone accomplishes something, a new job or some academic accolade. We're like, look, we're going to celebrate that and go on a trip. And then as an emergency physician, there's a lot of fun things we get to do just through work. So I do a lot of event medicine. So, I was able to work different sporting events where you get to kind of participate and be close to athletes for free, or big events like inaugurations for free. There's a lot of things that you can do where you combine what you're wanting to do academically with something that is fun. And I encourage you to look at that. Next slide. And then travel, like I mentioned. So I've traveled all over the place. I'm a huge proponent of traveling. I studied abroad when I was in undergrad. And I know that, sometimes that seems like a far reach for people. It's doable. I was pre-med. I had all these requirements that I had to do. And people are like, well, you can't do it if you do this. No, that's not true. Like I was able to organize it where I went to Australia. I actually spent 5 months there. And I had a great time, and that was kind of what gave me a travel bug early. And so since then, I've done a lot of traveling. So when I went to medical school, I ended up receiving an award to do a research project that was focused on the healthcare system. I was interested in why we have what I considered a fairly messed up healthcare system in the United States. It's one of the few developed countries that has no universal healthcare. And I wanted to ask why that is and how people like the healthcare systems in other countries. So I was given money to travel to Costa Rica, which is the picture you see in the top left, Japan, which is top middle, and the UK, which is top right, with my sister again. She's always piggybacking on my trips. And I interviewed physicians in all 3 of those countries and actually published a paper and had a wonderful research project. But I also got to travel to all those countries for free while I was in medical school. I also went to Bermuda, was another off-service rotation that I did, which you can see the pretty water again. And then after graduation, I got to do some time in Zanzibar and Tanzania, which you can see some pictures of. I've done a lot of boating and yachting trips. I like to scuba dive. So there's some pictures there from, I believe, Belize and a couple of the other places that I'd like to travel. And every time I travel, I run into someone interesting who I keep in touch with. And just like Dr. Cox mentioned, I keep in touch with those people because you never know where your interests or paths may cross again in the future. And thanks to kind of social media and technology, it's easy to keep in touch with those kinds of people, and you build up this network that really can help you accelerate, your life in the future. Next slide. So the path to doctorhood, I'm going to get into the nitty gritty of what this requires. So if you want to be a doctor, it's a lot of school. You have to start early, like in the beginning, you want to go to a university. Okay. In order to do that, you need to have some reasonable grades. You need to do as well as you can on the standardized tests. And then you also want to make sure that you are doing things that shows a university who you are. So what are you passionate about? Is there a sport that you do? Is there a service thing you do? Is there a hobby that you do? Do you play an instrument? You want to kind of build up who that person is. I went to Duke for undergrad. I'm sure there's going to be some Duke haters out there, but I loved Duke. I loved being a Blue Devil. It was an amazing place to go to school. It is a prestigious, well-known, reputable school, but I got an excellent education there and had a fun time doing it. I actually designed my own major at Duke in medical ethics and religion, another non-traditional thing that I did. So I thought I was going to do biomedical engineering. I got into engineering classes and I'm like, this is not for me. I don't really like math that much. And so I decided I was just going to make my own major. And it was after I took a religion course that I thought was really fascinating. I've always been interested in the intersection of religion and medicine, since historically, you know, religion and medicine have been very close. It's only in our secular society now that we divorce, you know, medicine and spirituality. In the past, you know, medicine men were spiritual men. Historically, even culturally for a lot of people, when you get sick, it calls you to have a kind of, you know, reliance on your faith, right? On your belief in whatever God or support system or community that you're in. And so I was always interested in that. And I designed a major that helped me to explore that. And then I did all my prerequisites so I could go to medical school. I went to medical school at Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland. Not as well known, but actually very reputable school. I did a dual degree there where I got my MD and a master's in bioethics at the same time. So it was a lot of work because I was basically doing 2 degrees in a condensed period of time, but I did it because I was able to get my master's for free while I was in med school. I also thought it was great to have the different hats, like the brain that you think of as a doctor and a brain that you think of as an ethicist and a bioethicist is very different. And I think that more medical students actually would benefit from having an ethical foundation. So that's part of what I teach now. I did residency at George Washington University in DC. I mentioned I was chief residence at that program in my final year. It was a 4-year program. So now we're looking at 4, 4, and 4, right? 12 years after high school that was required for me to be the physician that I am. And then some people go on and do even more training after residency to get fellowship. So, you know, the least amount of time that you can look at is, you know, someone who does essentially something like internal medicine, they'll do a 3-year residency and be done with their training and out practicing. If you do something like neurosurgery, you are going to be in residency for about 7 years after you graduate from medical school. And so it is a very long haul. And that is why I'm always preaching that you can't say, I'm going to start living my life when I'm done with my training. You got to live your life during the process. So, you know, these were long and arduous years. I worked very hard, but as you can see, I balanced that with a lot of fun, a lot of travel, and made sure that I was enjoying myself along the way. And so after graduating from me, I joined faculty at the University of Maryland. And currently I work at a very busy level 1 trauma center. I take care of a predominant African-American patient population. I love the work that I do. It challenges me, but then I also kind of augment that with running my business, doing the media interviews, and then I do a fair bit of teaching. So I teach ethics courses to medical students and residents and health policy courses to those same types. Next slide. So I'm gonna bring up a little bit about the money because I like to bring this up because I think it's a true motivator. So, you know, I know when you guys are thinking about careers, it is important to pick something that you're passionate about because you want something that you can have a sustainable career in. But it is extra awesome if you can find a career that pays well, that you enjoy going to. So I put this up here because I want people to consider careers in medicine, not because they pay well, but because they are satisfying. They allow you to give back. And while it takes a lot of time, effort, and money, right? I have a lot of student debt to go into them. You get well paid. Like you're going to have money coming out. Now, it says here that the average salary right now for an emergency physician is $350,000 a year. I don't make that much because I'm an academic doc. But I have plenty of colleagues who do. In fact, I have colleagues who make $400,000 as an ER doc. So this is not, pennies. And the reason I point this out is that I don't want people to think you need to be an athlete, an entertainer, or some of these other things that you're kind of really reaching to achieve, when there is a very prescribed path that you can take to get a career that will pay you well for the rest of your life to do something that's super meaningful. And I want you to consider that. So look at these numbers, physicians do make a lot of money. There is a lot of sacrifice, but this is one of the benefits that we reap. And, I have some ideas about how this probably needs to change in our society and our healthcare system. But as it stands now, I don't want people to be afraid of going after this dream of becoming a physician because you're like, I can't take on that student debt, or I can't do this. It will come out in the wash. You will be able to be financially comfortable, and you will have job security. And that's particularly important this day and age, because there's not a lot of job security with the vast majority of other careers. Even things like being a lawyer, you can get out and have all this education and not find a job. That does not happen when you're a doctor. You can see here, we're in the heights of a pandemic. We are the ones who will always have a job. And that goes to giving you, again, like that kind of financial security for life. Next slide. And that translates not just to medicine, but like any career. So this slide I just put up here just to show you the correlation between achieving a higher level of education and how much money you make. So, if you do not, if you basically don't have a high school diploma, you're going to be living usually on the poverty line. And that's not always usual. My husband is a very non-traditional person. He actually does not have a bachelor's. It was one of the reasons why I didn't think I was going to date him, because I was like, man, he doesn't have a bachelor's and I'm a doctor. I don't know how this is going to work. But he has taught me that you can be a hustler. So he's an entrepreneur himself. He was probably making six figures when I met him, and I didn't even know that. And he did that without a college degree. So it is not the only way for you to be successful, but there is a significant correlation between getting a higher education and making more money. And so when you're thinking about what you want to do, I want you to take this into consideration as well. Next slide. So go ahead and start thinking now about exploring your careers. And as I mentioned, choose something that you enjoy. You're going to have to do it for a long time. So it needs to be something meaningful to you. Otherwise, you will burn out and you will not be able to sustain yourself. So, it might be something you haven't even thought about or experienced yet. So, that's when it goes back to like walking through those open doors, those opportunities. Maybe you do a service project that introduces you to someone who does something different. Like, you always want to keep your eyes open for where, that career niche might be. And it's important when you have an idea that you want to do something to try to get engaged and involved and shadow that person. So, when I wanted to be a doctor, my mom was a nurse growing up. She was able to get me with some of her doctor friends so I could shadow them. So I could see what the day-to-day was like and not just say, hey, I want to be a doctor because it sounds good. I wanted to know, like, do I actually like the work that doctors do? Next slide. And then, also think about what your values are and like how that career plays to them. So is it most important for you to be helping others? Is it important for you to have prestige? I mean, some people, they want to have, that cloud or, achieve that degree because it's important and it's a legacy for their family. And that's okay. Is it important for you to make a lot of money, or is it just important for you to like have enough money to be comfortable? Do you want flexible working hours? As an emergency physician, I work fewer hours than a lot of other doctors, but I work hard hours, right? Like I have shifts that are 10 to 12 hours. I work a lot of holidays. But I can be very flexible in my life, right? I work evenings. Like I'm actually working today. That's why I have, my work stuff on. I'm going to work from 3 to 11 today, which means I have the morning to talk to you and the morning to spend time with my children. And my schedule changes every week. That's something that I like. Some people don't like that. They would want like, a regular job that is, this time during the day and prescribed vacations that they get. You got to get in touch with who's you and what makes you tick, and make sure that you're picking something that coincides with that. Next slide. So things to consider: do explore a lot of different careers, get some advice from people who do those things, and try something new. Don't hone in on just one thing. There were people in my medical school, I remember in particular, who were definitely like their parents were like, you're going to be a doctor. You can be a doctor or a lawyer. That's it. And a lot of them burnt out. In fact, I know several of them did not complete a medical school or residency. And that's probably because they didn't explore themselves and explore other opportunities. And don't do something just because it seems cool or it seems prestigious. Like, you want to make sure you're doing something that is actually true to you and the person that you are, and understand that that might change over time. Like, I went to Duke with this idea that I was going to be a biomedical engineer. And when I got there, I was like, you know what? I don't really want to do that. Let me see how I can change my path. And I still became a doctor, but I was open to exploring some other things. And that's what you want to do, is have some flexibility. Next slide. And then assess your skills. So know what you're good at. You got to know what you're good at and what you're not good at. Like if you are not particularly good at a certain subject matter, or, engaging, reading, speaking, then, maybe you should do something that's more critical thinking, or, maybe you have a job where you work on a smaller team and not with a large group of people, or maybe there's a particular area that you excel in versus you don't. You have to kind of assess your skills and categorize those so that you're always playing to your strengths and working on your weaknesses. Next slide. And again, highlighting how you can change your mind. 60% of students in college will change their major. And then actually, I'm sure there's statistics that are similar, that the majority of people do not even work in the area that they majored in college. That's very common. And so, you want to be careful when you're choosing a major and what you're going to study, to not like pigeonhole yourself, and make sure you're picking up a general skill set that's going to be able to keep your options open. Next slide. So I want you guys in, the chat to write some things about, I'm interested in what careers are you considering? Why are you interested in that field? What do you think you need to do to prepare that field? And, this idea of like responsibility, respect, caring, and good citizenship, that was what I was told is required to be in a career of medicine. But, that's what I was told, and that's what I'm sharing with you. I do think that those are some of the elements, but what are the elements, values that you think speak to the career that you're considering? And, I'd love to talk about some of that and answer some of your questions related to that. Next slide. And then make sure you network. So I'm going to give you guys my email at the end of this presentation, and I want you to contact me. And, when you get opportunities like that, you should pick up on them, right? Like all the mentors that I have, it's not like they came and found me and were like, hey, Liz, we want to mentor you. We're going to bring you a long way. No, it's like I kind of hounded and, semi-harassed them so that I could learn from them and engage in them. And that meant that I looked up their information. I followed up. If they were really busy and they didn't respond to me, I emailed them a few times and was respectful of their time, but made sure that I was persistent so I could get the information and assistance that I needed. And that starts now. So you want to start building up that network and your reputation now. Next slide. And then get some experience now. So volunteer, get a job, shadow someone, get that real life experience. That's what's going to inform you whether or not you like something. Nothing teaches like experience itself. Again, there's only so much that book knowledge is going to get you. Next slide. And then, make sure that you're giving yourself kudos and that you prop yourself up. I mean, I think that one of the things I think is particularly hard for your generation, and I live like on the edge of the generation, like, Facebook was born when I was in college, for example. And so before Facebook, I told Trishan, actually, Dr. Cox, I had to find that picture of us. It was a printed out picture. Like I took film somewhere and printed it out and put it in an album. And so I had to go physically find this album. That doesn't exist anymore. I have my phone now, like where I take 10,000 pictures of my kids every day. I don't know how parents dealt with this before phones, because, I take about 20 pictures of my kid every day. I don't know what I would do if I wasn't able to do that. But I think it's a double-edged sword, because the social media means you are constantly comparing yourself to other people and what they're doing. And people only portray, their best life really on social media. And you got to take that with a grain of salt. You need to make sure you're giving yourself love and make sure you're taking your personal wellness, seriously. And so sometimes for me, that means that you need to unplug and focus on those relationships. So, talk to whoever it is that's in your house, or call up somebody on the telephone instead of, video chatting. Write someone a letter. When have you written someone a letter? It's Valentine's Day is coming. Send somebody a Valentine. Those kind of personal, positive character traits that will help you feel good about yourself and other people are important to do along the way. Next slide. And then set some goals. So I always emphasize that goals should be challenging, reasonable, and specific. So challenging meaning it needs to be a bit of a reach, not an overreach, but a bit of a reach. Reasonable meaning not an overreach. Don't bite off more than you can chew. Like make it something that's plausible that you think you can obtain. And then specific. So you don't want to be general. Like, I want to be a professional. What kind of professional? How do you get there? What are you going to do right now that sets that up? Maybe I'm going to, if I'm interested in being a doctor, I'm going to email Dr. Clayborne and see if she has a doctor friend in New Jersey that she could connect me to, or maybe there's an organization where I can get more information, or, whatever that is, and then be accountable for what those goals are and measuring, whether or not you've achieved them. Next slide. And then make sure you do some short-term and long-term goals. So I know that Dr. Cox shared the lecture that someone else had done, and you guys are kind of big in looking at your 5-year plan, what your life is going to look like in 5 years. That's important. You got to think about like what that next step is. But in order to get there, you need to have a short-term plan. So what am I doing the rest of this school year to make myself successful, especially amid COVID? And then what are those small steps going to do to lead to that long-term goal? Next slide. And then make sure that you are taking responsibility for yourself. So, it's really easy to say, oh, this happened to me, or this situation occurred, or whatever. I mean, we all are going to have struggles in our life. And you got to be able to mitigate and deal with those struggles early on. The people who actually do the best in residency, as I can tell you as a chief resident, the number one thing I had to deal with my co-residents was not academic stuff. It wasn't people doing poorly or failing tests. It was that like life was happening. Like, let's say they broke up with a boyfriend, or a parent died, or someone got sick, and they just could not manage the training while life was happening. You got to start working at doing that now. That means you're going to have to be self-motivated and persistent. When tough things happen, you need to have the rules, the kind of ability to be resilient and move on. Next slide. And then again, I'm trying to, really highlight the idea that I want you guys to pursue a higher education and in something that you're passionate about, but I think that it will give you, a longer, potentially more prosperous life. And it's not always about money. I just think you should make sure that you're aiming for a career that has some stability, right? That has enough money to give you the ability to have that balance, to do a little bit of travel if that's what you're interested in, or pursue whatever your passion is on the side. Next slide. So then I also wanted to give you guys a little bit of information about COVID-19 in case you have questions, and you can follow up with me about this because I know that we're running a little short on time. But, I am a big proponent of the vaccine. I received the Pfizer vaccine. I was one of the very first people to get it. I had completed my vaccinations January 7th. I only had basically arm soreness. I might have got a little achy the second shot, but it was hard to tell because I worked a 10-hour shift after I got it. So I was feeling well enough to work that much. And in my opinion, when you're looking at whether or not you want to take the vaccination, what I encourage you to do is do your own research. So look at the data. I've looked at the data. I understand who was involved in the trials and what the risk benefits that we're considering. So when you're thinking about not getting vaccinated, that means that you are basically like, okay, I guess I want to try to get COVID and see how I do. But it's not just you. It's like, I might get COVID and do okay, but is my grandmother going to do okay? Is my family going to do okay? Is whoever I come in contact with going to have negative repercussions because of my decision not to vaccinate? And I think that there is very valid concerns within communities of color about the healthcare system. We have, things like the Tuskegee experiments, and just in general, our health disparities that have sound infrastructure that has been disproportionately affecting us in a negative way for a very long time. But with COVID-19, the entire world is watching what we're doing right now. And these vaccines are being very, very closely studied. And they're a different kind of vaccine, right? It's an mRNA vaccine. I can talk to you a little bit more about what that is. And, in my opinion, it is very safe, and it is a better option than, just taking your chances with COVID. So I'm happy to talk to you guys about that more.
Where'd my thing go? Oh no! Oh my god! Oh no! Sorry, I forgot. I didn't know I was on mute. Yeah. So it's only a minute left.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought we had 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Well, you give him the email.
All right. Can you type it in the chat?
Sure.
So sorry, guys.
You asked some good questions, though.
Yeah. Oh my god, the chat is like on fire. Oh wait, yeah, Mr. What did your product consist of, or like what is your first draft?
You guys can go to bleedfreeze.com. I'll put that on there as well. That's my company website. Here's my email. Here's my company website. I'm so sorry I talked too much. I won't.
No. It's fine. I mean, I took a lot of it as an adult. I don't know if I don't know. The kids, I know they took something out of it. I think, one thing for me that I just want to re-highlight is some of the things that you said that were embedded in there, like surrounding yourself with success. That's something that I do. And, you are who you surround yourself with. Like, if you're hanging out with bums on the street, like, they're going to pull you down. No disrespect. But, like, if you were surrounding yourself with people who will make you uncomfortable and pushing you to, like, grow and, like, take risks, like, you know what I mean? That's important. So, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. Time is valuable. It's our most expensive commodity. I really appreciate it. And man, those pictures from New Orleans really took me back. And it reminded me that, I need to continue to connect with people and continue to do this work. So thank you. I'm
No problem. Hopefully it was enjoyable, guys. I'm happy to connect with any of you guys who want to reach out to me.
All right. So yeah.